everyone, welcome to another video, and you've probably seen a lot of videos about this today, and a lot of takes, a lot of opinions are out there, and the PlayStation 5 Pro, or PlayStation 5 Professional, if you want to call it, has finally been unveiled. And we know now all the official specs, we know the price, we know the date, we know pre-order times, we know everything about it. But I don't think anything could have prepared anyone for the just sheer ridiculousness of the situation that was unveiled today with the price of the PlayStation 4. Or sorry, I'm going to keep saying for the PlayStation 5 Professional Edition, which is fucking insane. There's no other way to come out with it. Okay. Like, it's bad. It's really, really bad. So let's get into it. Let's dive headfirst into what I think is Sony at its worst since 2006. Let's dive in. Here we go. Taken right from IGN. Sony officially reveals the PlayStation 5 Pro during the PlayStation 5 technical presentation. This thing was 9 minutes. Thank God it wasn't longer than that, because like anybody having to listen to Mark Cerny it's going to take some time to get through that, and it's going to put a lot of people to sleep. They kept it brief. Boy, let's it was a 9-minute presentation for something that comes out in November that is going to cost. At the most is going to break, the cost is going to break a lot of people. It broke me. So, well, let's get into it. Sony has finally announced the worst kept secret in video games, the PlayStation 5 Pro. It costs $700. It does not come with a disk drive, and it launches this November. PS5 lead architect Mark Cerny confirmed the mid-gen refresh during the PS5 technical presentation. She said the new console lets Sony give players the high frame rates they prefer. The GPU is much larger, ray tracing is improved, and there's a custom hardware for machine learning, aka PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. So basically, to speak regular lingo, that's DLSS for PlayStation, and that's fine. You know, whatever. The systems are probably going to have that when we get to PS6 and whatever the next Xbox is. Anyways, but let's just address the major elephant in the room. This thing costs $700 fucking dollars. Who the fuck sat down and thought that was a good idea? Who in their right mind, when you go back almost 20 years ago, when the PS3 was announced and they came out and said it cost $600, who the fuck thought somehow, somewhere, we're going to try and do that again? And in a time where, you know, people, there is a good portion of my generation that is struggling to be able to buy a house at my age. You're going to put out a slightly better PlayStation 5 at $700. People aren't buying this thing, man. And, you know, in 2016, I could easily argue, hey, PS4 Pro, and that's the first argument anybody, and I don't know many people that are going to defend this, and let's be fair, most people I see watching this video, most people I see that are on Twitter or in forums are not defending this machine at all. They are, this is ridiculous. I'm not paying $700. My PS5 is just fine. And you know what, man? I'm right there with you. And it's not necessarily, and this is the thing people need to understand, like, at least for me and for some people, it's not the cost necessarily. It's like, I can't go out and buy one. I could totally go out and spend the money on this thing if I wanted to. But I look at this thing, I look at what it's offering in a mid-generation refresh, and the biggest issue I have with it, minus the fact that it is $700 fucking dollars, is that they showed nothing to tell me I need to go out and buy this thing. Their presentation started with, hey, here's The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, which to me is like a pretty much a fuck you middle finger, because I'm never going to play that game again. I think it's well documented on the channel that I'm not a fan of The Last of Us Part 2, but they just showed a bunch of old games. Demon Souls, Spider-Man 2, which came out last year. Nothing new was shown. Nothing where I'm like, oh, holy shit, okay, this is why I need to buy this thing. There wasn't that moment in that 9-minute presentation. And I know some people might say, well, you know, a 9-minute presentation isn't really the best place to debut a new game, but show something. How much do you think this would have sold people if they showed even 10 seconds of Grand Theft Auto 6? Because let's be fair, that's the one game that I think people would be like, okay, but GTA 6 is going to look pretty good on it, you know? And I think that's the one game, at least for me, that I would be like, all right, maybe, you know? Like, that's the one thing. But we got to address that first elephant. It's $700. They showed no new games that support this thing. Again, there will be new games that come out and support it, but like, my God, man, it's fall 2024. We are presumably more than halfway through this console's generation. And I still don't know what the fuck Sony's plan is for the future. Yeah, you can give me the fanciest fucking PlayStation 5 with all these bells and whistles, but what new games am I going to be playing at? What new experiences am I going to play on it? Are you really going to sit here and tell me that Astrobot can look better on a PS5 Pro? Because I have a hard fucking time believing that. I don't even own Astrobot yet. I just think the game looks incredible and I can't wait to play it when I do. But I just look at this thing and go, who is this for? Like, it only solidified my decision to just build a new PC in the spring, because I was already looking at jumping ahead a year early on doing that. I was going to wait until probably March 2026. I usually like to build a new PC around the 6-year mark. But honestly, I'm thinking about just doing it early because Windows 10 support is going to end October of next year. And unfortunately, the PC that I built that I use right now to do all my editing, to do the gaming that I do, will not be upgradable to Windows 11. So I have to build a new computer anyways. And so, yeah, I might as well just fucking do that. Like, I watched this thing and it was like, okay, fuck me, I'll build a PC. Like, that was my literal reaction. Like, after this, talking to some of the people that are on the podcast with me, talking to my other friends, like, even one person in my friend circle that I would consider Mr. PlayStation of our friends group is like, fuck no, I'm not paying $800. Because that's the thing. And that's the other part I got to put in here. And I'll bring it up real quick. It does not come with a disc drive. That's right. Look at the picture here. There's no disc drive with this thing, man. You have to buy the disc drive separately. So it's the disc drive that's already out. It's $80. And then you get this little thing, you slap it on, right? And then you got your disc drive. And you like this sweet stand? Oh, it's sold separately. So Here's some of the specs. We'll go down just to cover all the bases here, okay? It has an upgraded GPU. With PS5 Pro, we are upgrading to a GPU that has 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory. Overall, this enables up to 45% faster rendering for gameplay, making the experience much smoother. So games are going to run a little bit smoother. Advanced ray tracing. This is one of my biggest gripes with it, and we'll get into it, but let me read this part first. We've added even more powerful ray tracing that provides more dynamic reflection and refraction of light. This allows rays to be cast at double and times triple the speeds of the current PS5 console. And the final thing here, AI-driven upscaling, that's that PSSR, an AI-driven upscaling that uses machine learning-based technology to provide a super sharp, clear image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. Sony also confirmed the PS5 Pro price is $699 with a release date of November 7th and includes a 2TB SSD, the DualSense, and a copy of Astro's Playroom pre-installed, just like the PS4, or just like the regular PS5. It does have Wi-Fi 7 for the 5 people that have that router that has that compatibility. So, okay, let's jump into one of my biggest problems here. Advanced ray tracing. Like, ray tracing to me is such a non-starter. Like, it was such a cool thing back in 2020 when it was first kind of unveiled. 2019, 2020, it's like, hey, ray tracing. I remember getting the 2070 that I ran in my computer for a while, and I could kind of mess around with it a little bit in Minecraft. I was like, yeah, that's pretty, cool, but again, the thing that you have to understand is like most developers are pretty fucking good at lighting in video games. And so you don't end up really getting a lot of games that use ray tracing to its full potential. Also, ray tracing, as we already know, is an incredibly taxing thing when it comes to GPU horsepower. So like, I can't imagine turning ray tracing on this machine is going to give you a considerably smooth 4K 60 frames per second run here. I think it's going to have some issues. Now, the big selling point here, of course, from Mark Cerny is, you know, hey, we want to get back to the days where you didn't have to worry about modes. You just put in the game and it works at the highest graphical fidelity and the, you know, best frame rate that it possibly can. I understand that, and great, absolutely. But to charge people $700 for that, and here's my fear with this thing, okay? And here's where I start having issues with it. Number one, we already know Microsoft is not doing a next-gen refresh. I mean, again, could Phil Spencer have lied? I mean, he's been proven a liar before at this point. So is it possible that maybe at TGS they come out and say, no, we are working on our version as well. It'll be out next year and it's a 1X situation? Absolutely. There's totally a possibility that that could happen. But it doesn't seem likely, and this whole thing seems like such a fucking non-starter. So by not having a direct competitor do this, that also allows Sony to upcharge a little bit more, which is why you're seeing a $700 price tag for this thing. Now, again, I've seen people in comments and arguments on Twitter and stuff about, well, you know, if you add the PC parts up, this is actually a pretty good deal and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's all great and fine, dude. If I'm going to add this up as a PC, then I'm just going to go fucking build a PC that can play all of these games. And as people have pointed out today, and I'd like to point out, when it comes to playing in what we'll call PC land here, you don't pay for an online. I mean, you pay obviously for your internet, but you don't pay for an online service for the privilege to play games online. You can have free cloud saves like through Steam and whatnot. You're not tied to a walled garden in particular. Like a lot of these games are everywhere. There are PlayStation games you can play right now on PC. Pretty much every Xbox game comes out on PC. You can have the best of both worlds by just fucking building a PC. If there's one thing that Sony did today, it was pretty much guaranteeing that come this next console generation, I might just be a PC gamer with whatever the next Nintendo is, be it a Switch 2 or I'd love it to be called the Super Switch. But it might go that route because Microsoft's already pushing me towards that with every release. Just we can't hit that 60 frames. So it's telling me, well, just play it on my PC where I can do that anyways. And then on the flip side of that, now Sony is telling me, well, if you really want the best, then you got to buy the $700 machine. Number two, my fear with the PS5 Pro is that, as we've seen time and time again, developers get lazy. And what I do not want to see happen with this thing is we fall back on, well, if you want 60 frames, you're going to have to buy a PS4 or PS5 Pro. Otherwise, we're just going to shoot for, 4K 30, and we're not going to have a performance mode. But if you want that 60 frames, go buy. We have a system for you. It's the PS5 Pro. It's $700. I don't want to see that happen. I would rather stick to the way it has been, where you get the choice. And again, as it was said in the presentation, 3 out of 4 people choose performance mode over fidelity. So it's clear more people care about performance than they care about graphical fidelity. And yeah, like I just, that's the other thing. I look at this thing and go, okay. And then the third part I would put a little bullet point is like, so we're really going to put one machine on the market here that does all this stuff at a higher frame rate and everything. Like, there's no competition for it if Microsoft's like, fuck it, we're not making a machine. So again, that's like, who is this for? Who needs this? They're not gonna, this isn't going to be the industry standard. The industry standard is always going to be the base model. So I just, what a misfire. Like I remember the PS3 the gasps in that presentation of like $600. And well, obviously we didn't have that kind of thing today because it's different type of presentation. You could feel it all across the internet, man. Like there's not a single person I know that was like, oh, that seems like a reasonable price. Everybody's just kind of looked at this thing collectively and been like, what the fuck? In a way, it's been refreshing because it's kind of like, at least for a day, put aside the culture war that seems to be consuming every aspect of the video game world. And I think I've seen pretty much everybody's able to come together and laugh at this thing and go, why is this thing $700 fucking dollars? That being said, it's Sony. They're not going to change the price of this thing right away. They're not going to back down. This thing will come out. It's going to be $700. It is what it is. It's incredibly disappointing to me that after 4 years, we still are selling the base PS5 for $500 fucking dollars. There's never been a price cut. There's been temporary sales and stuff like that, but there's never been a true price cut. In fact, just yesterday, they announced that controllers for the PS5 are going to be $5 more from now on. So we got a price increase even in America. And in Japan, the base PS5 got a price increase as well. Like we're going backwards with this generation in an insanely incredible way that it's fucked up. This thing, like, it's just such a disaster. Like we kind of saw like Sony's like very much like Microsoft has been stepping on rakes all summer this year. We've seen it shift to Sony now. They stepped on a massive rake with Concord and the disaster that game was. They had a little bit of a brief moment where they were kind of soaring high on Astrobot, which again, Astrobot looks like an incredible fucking game. I cannot wait to play it, but I'm just going to wait for Black Friday sale. So when you put that aside, then you put at this machine, you announce no new games for it. It's $700. If you want a disk drive, it's an additional $80. If you want to stand, like most people stand their system up now, that's another $30. We're getting into PC territory, like build your own PC territory at this point. So this thing is a disaster. It'll be really interesting to see how Microsoft responds, but it's going to be really interesting to see like what happens here in the future. Like, I can't wait. My big test for this thing is going to be when we hit the 26th. So pre-orders launch on September 26th. I'm going to be very curious to see, like, is it even going to be a struggle if I want to reserve one, or like, will they sell out right away? I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with it, but this thing's a disaster for me. It just, everything about the presentation, no new games. I still couldn't tell you, like what's Sony's 2025 plan looking like, man? What new games am I going to be enjoying that are exclusive to the PlayStation 5? I couldn't tell you. And the other thing I'll throw out here too is like the last thing I'll throw out is kind of a prediction, if you will. Microsoft obviously has said we're not doing an interim console this time. And I think that's wise. I was really hoping Sony would do the same thing. Like, you know what? We did it once. I get it. 2016, they totally had to do this because we had the jump from 1080p to 4K TVs, right? That's not really a thing in 2024. The only real advancement here has been, 4K to OLED 4K. Like it's not the same, but Microsoft has said we're not going to do it. My prediction is that I think they start their next generation early. I fully believe that they're going to fire off a new Xbox fall 2025. That's my hot take prediction right now, is that I think they're not going to sit on this too long because they hate losing the power aspect. They cannot stand not having the more powerful machine. And let's be fair, like, you can say what you want. Like, obviously, PlayStation 5 has outsold a Series X like 5-1, but the Xbox Series X is at times a technically more powerful machine. Very slightly, but it is. And Microsoft hates losing that battle. So I totally feel like they might be like, fuck it. You know what? The next generation is going to start next fall. Here's our new system. Here's the handheld we've been talking about as a kind of a companion piece to it. And time's going to tell what's going to happen. Now, again, I'm not saying that's going to be the savior of this thing, because the other terrible precedent that this sets is, are we looking at these types of prices for the next generation of consoles? Like launching at $700? Like that's so astronomical that I don't know, man. So I really don't know. It's crazy. This is such a fucking bad disaster for Sony. They shot themselves in the foot. This is like so close to a Don Mattrick moment for Sony that I don't know how they're going to recover from this. I really don't, like, because again, what are the games? If we like, I think we can all collectively agree that this generation has been fucking bad. There have been some good diamonds in the rough for sure, but there has been, I always go back to this analogy is I look at the games I picked as my games of the year. 2021, it was a free-to-play game, Splitgate. 2022, it was Vampire Survivors. And 2023, it was the first time I picked like a AAA game to be my game of the year. It was Alan Wake 2. Okay, so in this generation, I picked one AAA game to be my game of the year. That's really fucking bad. And it shows how bad this generation has been. There's just not been enough games. There's not enough games for me to go out and justify purchase of a $700 machine. For what? So Ellie looks a little bit sharper in The Last of Us Part 2? Fuck yourself. So I'm curious what you guys think about it. Is there anybody watching this video that's going to buy a PS5 Pro at launch? What do you guys think? Does this set a bad precedent for the next generation of consoles? I'd love to know your thoughts. Remember, as always, to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time.